Wrath and Grace Radio listeners, I want to tell you about one of our sponsors, Kepler Education.
Kepler is a consortium of independent teachers offering classes in all subjects for grades 7 through 12 and beyond.
Unified by a shared vision for classical education, innovative technology, and the historic Christian faith,
Kepler teachers prepare students for a professional and private life well lived, and they do it around a schedule and a budget tailored to the needs of your family. And I'm not just excited about Kepler because they are one of our sponsors, but I too am a Kepler teacher within the consortium. So come check us out at kepler.education.
Kepler is not a traditional online school. It is a consortium of independent online educators unified by a common vision to bring a Christian and classical education to junior high and high school students.
All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Wrath and Grace Radio. And today, man, we're gonna go ahead and talk about this 2-hour-long interview that dropped between Kanye West and Joe Rogan, and the whole host of topics that they hit. Man, you needed some stamina to keep up with that joint. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Before we get going, we want to remind you that this conversation is powered by Logos Bible Software. As a matter of fact, they just dropped Logos 9. So, man, you need to go ahead and get that. Go ahead and go to logos.com/WGR and enter code WGR8 to get some discounts on your resources. All right, y'all. So 2-hour interview, Kanye West. Y'all know a year ago, we did an interview with Kanye West pastor. Right. All this stuff was coming with Kanye, man. He sounded like a believer. We interviewed Adam Tyson. And here we are a year later. Now he's running for president. And everybody thinks he's insane. I won't say everybody. A lot of people think he's insane. And then he goes on Joe Rogan. And people still think he's kind of insane. So first for you guys, did you manage to muscle your way through that entire 2-hour-long conversation? And do you guys think Kanye West is insane? What do you think, Luke?
No, so I made it. I had to take a couple stretches there, but I got through it. Well, no, I don't think Kanye West is insane. And, you know, as we get to talking about it more, I think there's some really interesting things going on with Kanye. But also, I think that I would say at this point that I don't think that Joe Rogan thinks he's crazy after that discussion. So I think that's an interesting point. Obviously, they talked about everything in existence, you know. I guess he's like the new preacher in Ecclesiastes, and he's considered literally in a 2-hour stretch everything under the sun.
Yeah, he hit them joints, every joint. Yeah. Yeah. So Nick, same thing, man. Getting through that joint. I think I know where you land on this. I may have seen a tweet thread that I don't know what you were going on, man. But yeah, man, where are you at with the Kanye interview?
Yeah, man, I was impressed, honestly. I think I think people have sold him short because he has done some crazy things, which he acknowledges. He has had some difficult times, which he acknowledges. People have portrayed him in a certain light, sometimes fairly, sometimes not so much. And I think if people would slow down and just listen to him talk about the things he's talking about, you would actually be fairly impressed with his depth of knowledge and understanding and his ability to think through some complex issues in a meaningful way. That, quite honestly, and if you get onto sort of the political piece of some of the things he's talking about, in ways that you don't really hear politicians talk about things that you wish they would, and then obviously he's growing in his understanding of the scriptures and of the church and what that should look like, and preaching. And so, yeah, there was so much to unpack there. I mean, he would go from one thing to the other without breathing. And I told you guys, this is the first time ever I think someone has gone on Joe Rogan's podcast and has been able to filibuster him for like 10 to 15 minutes at a time.
Yeah, Joe was shook, man. Like, I don't know if Joe
He was.
I don't know what it was that kept him quiet. I don't know if it was like, I don't know what to say. I don't know if it was Kanye, man, he's kind of reached the level of fame and stardom that is almost seeming like untouchable, right? Like he's getting there with his fame and his influence and his reach, where it's getting like almost like Michael Jackson type levels, in my opinion. Because you don't see, and I want to talk about this, you don't see a lot of people with his influence, his wealth, who say the things that he says. And part of that is, man, they can lose endorsements, they can lose contract. That there's so much at stake for kind of towing the line, and he doesn't toe the line at all, and he doesn't lose his deal with Adidas or all these other companies. So why is that Kanye can kind of speak freely? He can say things that no one else can say, and it doesn't seem to have a negative impact on him whatsoever. Go ahead, Luke.
I wouldn't say that as much. I mean, I think that it brings out a negative side of some people, right? Especially now that he's explicitly, taking biblical positions on things, honestly, and just saying them like they are. There's no theological, jargon that he uses, right?
Yeah.
And so there's negative reactions to that, obviously. And I think when people hear him talk about things like abortion, that's probably where they're getting a lot of their fuel for he's insane. That's where they actually feel what he's saying and disagree with it, right? I mean, next to Joe Rogan, he's a giant compared to Joe Rogan, and you can feel that in the discussion. You can feel that when they talk about money, Kanye being a billionaire. And so
multi-billionaire.
Yeah, it's crazy, right?
Yeah, but that's what I'm talking about, though, because people will say he's insane, or they say, that sounds negative. But when I mean negative, I'm talking about tangible ramifications, like he suffers real loss because of his opinions or statements. And I don't see that. I see his opinions and statements being boldly professed, and he continues to gain in the business world, in his personal finances. Just over a couple years, he goes from in debt to Forbes. I think it probably wasn't even 2 years ago where Forbes put him on the billionaires list, and they had him like barely over $1 billion, and then now he's over $5 billion, right? So that's what I'm talking about in terms of negative. Like you're always going to have people who got something to say, but the dude is just winning business wise, and I can't figure out why it is he gets to do that, and other celebrities don't get to do that.
It's hard to argue with the results, honestly, and the guy. I mean, he gets things done. That was something Joe just kept bringing up, was how productive Kanye is, how much stuff he's doing, how successful it is, everything he's touching. He's successful and innovative. And my goodness, you listen to him talk through that interview and all of the different people he mentioned that he's having conversations with, that he's doing deals with, stuff people would never know. Like, oh yeah, hey, we called up NASA and we're talking to them about this garden we're trying to plant for this school and we needed some physicists, and he's going on this stuff. Like, it's not like you and I can just pick up the phone and call someone at NASA and riff for an hour about hydroponics or something. So he's, I think that's part of it, is that he, because of his fame and his notoriety and his success, he's able to build these relationships that are going to continue to help keep him afloat. But as much as people want to disagree with him, it's hard to argue with the results, for one. But two, I think he, for so long prior to what we understand to be his conversion, to come to the truth of the scriptures, to embrace Christianity, where people really started kind of turning on him and saying things about him. Prior to that, he had such a platform already that it was like, it was almost at that point, like, he can say anything. And what are you going to do? Like, what are you going to take away from him?
Yeah. I think some of it is people, they've put him in this category for a long time. That dude's crazy. So they're, I think, probably more willing to roll with it in some ways too.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But I think another thing we see, though, is there's kind of a spectrum of Kanye opinions. You have the he's crazy, he's insane, but then the other side of that is he's a genius. right? And almost it's even getting to the point where some are taking away. You have qualifiers of his genius. Oh, he's a musical genius or an artistic genius. And for some, you even see that going away, and it's just, yo, he might be a genius, right? And so you've got this spectrum of opinions on Kanye. So we've talked a little bit about the insane one. Where do you guys lean in terms of are we talking about and watching and listening to an actual genius? What do you think about that?
Well, I think that in the creative realm, right? I think that, and that's what he calls himself, a creative genius, right? Mm-hmm. So I think of all his different endeavors, I would all put them under that. So, you have vastly different disciplines like music production and like architecture, which he's doing as well. But both of those would be really very artistic things. I don't see Kanye West thriving in the academic world. I don't see Kanye West thriving in mathematics. I may be totally wrong about that. But I think that everything is localized on that creative side of things. Mm-hmm. But there's so much like diversity in it that just goes to show really that he is, if he has genius, which he clearly does, it is in those realms where he really thrives.
Yeah, undoubtedly. I think he really is. And again, if you listen to him talk and the breadth of things he's able to talk about with specificity and with knowledge is quite impressive. But I thought it was fascinating to me at one point toward the end of the interview. He said, and I'll quote it here from the transcript. He said, "Okay, yes, I am a genius," which no one's surprised to hear him say that. But he says, "Okay, yes, I am a genius, but one of my most genius skill sets is recognizing other geniuses and empowering them and giving them the platform." So it's one of those things where once you kind of swim through those comments a little bit and you sort of think about what he's actually saying, it's absolutely true. It's true. What he's doing and the way he's doing it in so many ways is quite brilliant. Now, of course, he has the resources to do things that maybe others would do if they had those resources. But nevertheless, he's doing them, and he's doing them on pretty high levels. And in so doing them, he is going to people who are brilliant in their fields, and he's using them, and not only using them, but now giving them a place to do that in ways that are going to be much more useful and influential than they ever could have been without his help and influence on top of it.
Yeah. Go ahead, Luke.
Nick, it was during that part of the interview when I thought, if Kanye West found out about Wrath and Grace Radio, which he undoubtedly will in time,
of course,
he would instantly become a Patreon supporter and member of the Fellowship of the Cup.
Yeah,
this is my intuitive thought.
You're thinking too small. You're thinking too small. That's what Kanye said. He said, at first I wanted to buy my master's, and I realized I was thinking too small.
No, that's his first thought.
I'm going to buy Universal, right? So that would be a second. His second thought would be, I'm going to buy Patreon. That's what it is.
so that I can fully support Wrath and Grace Radio.
Yes. It still ultimately ends with the support of Wrath and Grace Radio and him becoming a member of the Fellowship of the Cup. So
now, Wade, just if he was kind of entry level and just trying to figure out everything about that, how would he go about doing that just at a base level?
Oh, at a base level, like if he wasn't a multi-billionaire, he would just go to patreon.com/Wrath and Grace and sign up. He'd get a dope mug in the mail. He'd probably sip some, I'm sure he has the most exquisite coffee. I want to have coffee at Kanye's house. But either way, imagine Kanye coffee from his house and whatever machine. He probably got the Willy Wonka factory chocolate up in there and inside the Wrath and Grace mug, yo. That's why he's so hooked all the time.
And I think he could do that at a really low price, right?
Yeah, he's man. Free to, as a Patreon supporter, you're free to give more, but he could get in at that entry level. I think he'd be happy to do that.
He could get in at $10 a month, but Kanye,
anyone can get in at $10 a month.
Wow,
anybody
could. But Kanye would do more. And we could learn a lot from Kanye. So you can give more.
So, you heard it here. If you want a chance at being in the top secret chat with Kanye West, then go to patreon.com/Wrath and Grace and sign up today.
Yep. That's what you should do.
Our lawyers
A
told
chance.
us we have to say these comments cannot be verified.
Yes.
That is correct.
Dan, put a asterisk somewhere. Yeah. But y'all, so the Kanye joint, right? One of the things I thought was interesting is he seems like a well-read person, which is, you don't think about Kanye sitting around burying himself in books, but as he's talking, some of it is his ideas, but he's always able to point back to something in history or some key figure or something he's learned from some event. So that was impressive to me. He seems really well-read. And another thing is he seems very patient, which is crazy because he talks all over the place. So he seems like somebody who just has this energy that's uncontrollable. But when he was talking about how he had this designer, I think the designer was at Nike, and they had a non-compete clause. And so it took him 2 years to hire this guy because he thought the guy was a genius. And so he pretty much, it sounds like, I think he just like paid the guy to go surf for like a year until his non-compete clause ran out. And then he eventually came to work for Kanye, right? And so that's a very patient thing to do for you to get what you want, you know what I mean? To invest in someone for X amount of time. So how did that strike you guys? Did you get the same vibe, one, that he seemed really well-read? And then also talk about some of those things you saw. He seems like a very patient, someone willing to kind of take the long, slow road if that's what it takes. What do you think, Nick?
Yeah, it's obvious that he has read a lot, is reading a lot, and quite honestly, I think in other interviews I've heard him say that the primary thing he's doing now is reading his Bible. I forget who it was. Someone interviewed him and said, "What does a day at the West household look like?"
It was on the airplane with that one dude.
Oh, that's right, with one of the late night hosts or whatever. And he said, we get the kids in bed, Kim watches TV, and I sit and read my Bible. And the host was like, you read your Bible? He's like, yeah, I read my Bible. Like, that's what Christians do. You read your Bible. So, he's spending time at least reading the scriptures. But it is, I agree, Wade, that there are a lot of things that he said where it's like, that's not just some random bit of knowledge you pick up along the way without spending some time immersing yourself in the literature.
I was struck by that part as well, and he grabs from everywhere, from history, and you could tell that he's inspired by these things and generates a lot of his own ideas in them. But just at a more base level, you can tell that he's just extremely curious and always wants to learn about things, and that's a big part of being creative in the first place, is just a curiosity about stuff, and certainly a part of true genius and learning. So I think that he just likes learning about things, and obviously then finds inspiration in those things, which is awesome. So him reading the Bible is really dope because he's going to continue to draw inspiration from Scripture now.
Yeah, I think it's dope. One of the things he said about when he's creating, he said, "I'm like a 3-year-old," and I thought that was interesting. You could take that and go like, "Yeah, you sure are like a 3-year-old." But I think what he's getting at is, when you're talking to a 3-year-old, there's no such thing as like impossible. There's no such thing as that doesn't make sense or that's never been done before. As adults, we tend to like rationalize ourselves out of risk taking or out of doing something or thinking something that seems totally preposterous. And he seems to not have any of those restraints. And so, Nick, do you think, is there something that we can learn from this, from the 3-year-old creative Kanye? Is this something that is endearing that we should go, oh man, that's, that we should actually grow in that way? Or is that something where, man, Kanye, he's crazy, he needs to mature?
Yeah, well, that's in many ways it sort of brings, and whether he would describe it this way or not, but it really brings up sort of a very old problem, and that is that when you get into the time of the Enlightenment, you see in many ways an abandonment of things like the arts. And everything is sort of brought into submission to sort of this empiricism and this idea that we have to be able to test and verify everything. And so all of a sudden, ideas are starting to get sort of boxed off into these categories that we're no longer supposed to sort of try and work outside of or transcend. And I think there is a lot to learn there that, so in some ways it's like if we say this can't be done in this way, then we just stop trying to make discoveries. We just stop trying to make progress. We just stop trying to grow. And so, you look at any of the great inventors throughout history, it was because they were willing to say, I'm not going to be sort of boxed into what we understand to be normal. I'm going to try things, knowing that for every 100 things I try, I might fail 99 of them. But the one time that I succeed, I've created something that is going to change the world, or is
a light bulb.
Yeah, something like that. Which he actually talks about, like Edison and Westinghouse and Tesla, as these men throughout history who were doing those kinds of things in ways that nobody else was even willing to consider at the time.
Yeah, I think it's dope. Like even when you think about you have an idea like the light bulb, and he ended up inventing like multiple other things just to make the light bulb happen,
Yeah.
And
there's a movie that was done recently. Benedict Cumberbatch was Edison, and one of the things, he brought on like an intern to work with him, and he told the intern, he said, okay, you have to make, I think it was like a new invention every week, and then a new big invention every 10 weeks or something like that. But that was the idea, is that we need to be cranking out ideas week after week. We don't have time to waste. We need to make progress. And very few people are actually thinking that way. We sort of get locked into what we do. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, because we are given a task. We have gifts that God has given us. We want to do them and to do them well. But in some ways, we sort of get so locked in that we're unwilling to discover new things or try new things or experience new things because we just get comfortable where we are. And I think that kills a lot of possibilities.
Mm-hmm. You can kind of feel that, and he because he's thinking on a grand scale, and he has the resources to do that. He can dispatch people to get things done, and so he's thinking about things like, the structure of the way that the world works. So he is thinking about, the room he's sitting in, and it's a box, and he doesn't like that, So he's creating new spaces that more reflect the kind of shapes and patterns that you see just in the creation, which that's cool. But he's getting down to that idea where he wants the whole structure in which creativity takes place to all work together, down to the very architecture. Yeah. And you got to respect that. You have to.
Yeah, you saw it in the, I think maybe it might have been 200 people on Earth who saw the Jesus is King IMAX film. But if you had the pleasure of sitting through that awkward joint, you see the architecture, the architecture in that film, where he had the choir singing. You remember that, Luke? I know you saw it. It's like this big circular, I don't even want to call it a dome, because if you looked at it aerially, it looked like a disc, like in the middle of nowhere, right? So yeah, man, he's really it's like he's not satisfied with anything as it is.
But on that film really makes me think of what Nick just mentioned about the 99 failures. And you know how the Lord said, leave the 99 for the one, and that was one. I'm sure many people left.
We watched that joint. We was like, what is this? That was
tough.
Yeah, man.
But that gets into being I bet he doesn't even care that it's whack. You know what I'm saying? He's not afraid to try stuff.
He probably forgot that he made that joint already.
He probably did. So it's like, whatever. That's cool too. So that's good stuff.
Kind of back to one of your earlier questions, Wade, is this idea of someone like him who's trying new things and putting them out there for everyone to see as it's being worked on. That's when people look at things and say, "Oh, he's crazy," or he's losing his mind, or whatever. It's like, no, I mean, not really. He's doing things that other people haven't thought of, and maybe they're in such a early stages of him doing them that they look crazy. But let's wait and see where it goes. And you know, what was fascinating to me was when he started talking about being medicated and being sent away to like a mental institution and stuff. And kind of, it seems like maybe I heard him wrong, or you guys can clarify, but it seemed like what he was saying was like, it was when they put him on medications and put him in that place that's when he started doing things that were crazy and wild, and saying wild things, or doing things sort of spontaneously. Whereas
You mean
when
things
he's
that
not
are
on
actually
those,
are crazy?
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Exactly. So like that was an interesting thing where it was like, they want to medicate me, but when they medicate me, they make me crazy. But when I'm not on those things, and it's funny because when he says something or does something that gets national attention, where it raises everyone's eyebrows a little bit, everyone says, well, Kanye's off his meds again. And what
It's
he's
so
implying
dumb,
is,
yo.
you know what? Actually, Kanye is
Honestly,
probably on meds again.
Probably.
he
Yo.
gives you little hints too. Like I noticed in his music, a lot of people missed it. There's one song, I think it was on that song God, on the Jesus is King album. He says something like, "I dyed my hair for every time I could have died."
Yeah. Yeah.
And so when he said that, I started paying attention to like going back to like old footage and seeing like when he had purple hair or pink hair or black, just a random, like, why is Kanye popping up with this random hair dye? And all those were like seasons where like he almost lost it and had like a near death experience. Of course, you know, if you take his and then you line it up with what he was going through, it's like that would totally make sense. And he like even made art out of that. So it's like, this is an interesting dude, man. So yeah, genius, crazy. You guys decide. I don't think he's, I don't want to say I don't think he's crazy. I think he's a little bit of both, man. Whatever that line is, that's right between, I think
a fine line.
it is a
but
fine line.
I mean, I think it's important to define, like, what do we mean crazy? Like clinically, psychologically, like unstable, or just
Not
like,
anymore. Now that he's a Christian, he's not. I think he ran the danger of it before, to be honest, because now he has something that he didn't have before, which is humility, right? So before, listen, before it
compared
was
to what he was before.
before
he said he
it
was a god. Now he's just
exactly.
a genius.
Yo, for real. Before it was, I want to get into that. Before it was, you don't have the answer, Sway. You don't have the answer, Sway. But now it's, I just actually stopped to pray because I'm not sure what to say to that.
Yo,
You know what I'm saying?
Let me
Before,
okay,
go.
Before you go,
Yeah.
I want to. I'm dead honest here. When he did that, like, I was moved by that. Honestly, I was, and here's kind of the setup to that. Was Joe Rogan was talking to him about running for president, and he said, as a president, you have to make these big decisions, and this was one on foreign policy and the possibility of sending your army into war. And for me, I think about that a lot because of my own experiences, having gone to war many times in the military, knowing what that's like. And so often politicians or people running for office talk about that sort of thing so flippantly, as if like, yeah, we'll go and take the enemy and it's just what it is, without giving any thought to the actual cost of people's lives. Not only lives here, but lives of the people that will be taken fighting for their cause or their country or whatever. And the fact that Joe asked that question, and then all of a sudden Kanye goes silent, and it's a little awkward because no one knows what's going on. But then he says, I just had to stop and pray there. And he's like, why did you feel the need to do that? And he said, because this is a serious thing. Like, these are people's lives. This is an important thing that we can't just talk about. Like, we've been cutting up and having a good time, but all of a sudden we shift to something really important. I want to make sure that I think about it and pray about it and have the right words to say about it because it's that important. That
You
to
can
me
tell.
was like, that's why, like, I wish in a presidential debate, instead of trying to squeeze every word they can into 2 minutes, one of them would stop and reflect and say, you know what, that's a heavy question. And the part of that, and I'll shut up after this, that piece of you're saying, Luke, of bringing in some humility, where he said, you know what, the reality is, on that question, I may not have all the answers, but I'm going to bring in people who can help. the people who know what to do and how to do it, and we'll talk and we'll come to some kind of decision on those things. Like who hears? Nobody talks like that in our day of elections and everything. It's like, I'm the person who has all the answers, elect me and everything will be better and be done right, even though we all know that's not true. So the humility to say, I don't know, but I would have the right people who do is that was huge to me, just to hear him think like that and talk like that. It's just being a real person at that point.
It was wisdom. Yeah, there was some wisdom in there, which you really got to appreciate. So this is what I think. Okay, I don't know where you want to take things next, Wade, but I think it's appropriate to bring this up.
Go.
So you think, okay, Kanye's been a Christian for some time now. He's still saying things like, I'm a genius. I mean, today on this one, it was, I am called to lead the free world. I mean,
yeah,
it's his calling from God.
He's dead serious about that, right?
He's dead serious. He's on that Blues Brothers tip right now, yo.
He is. So I'm trying to process that as I'm listening. What is just the same old Kanye, or is something different? Because I think it's different now. I think that he's a young believer, man, and I don't think a believer should be talking about themselves like that unless they're boasting in their own household, as we often do to our wives, and we tell them how much of a genius they married, right? That sort of thing happens. But generally speaking, I think humility will grow on Kanye, and I don't think he's always going to be saying that. I think it's part of his, just being a young believer. But this is the difference that I see. Before, it was, I'm a creative genius, so forget all y'all. I'm the best, But now everything he's saying is, I'm a creative genius, and I want to help you. He wants to put people on. He wants to shed the rays of his own brilliance upon other realms that he's not really a part of, but he might have ideas. And so I think I just take that as the guy's different. The guy talks different. He's different. I really am very thankful, and it seems like God has really saved this man. And if that's true, then I think he's only going to continue to grow. But do you guys see what I'm talking about? It seems to be a whole different vibe, even though he's using a lot of the same words that he used before he was a Christian.
Yeah.
Yeah, think about the Apostle Paul in his letters. If you look at some of his earlier letters and how Paul writes about himself, sort of, I'm the apostle among apostles, and then at the very end, he says, I am the chief of sinners. Like, just his own language about himself. And there's this, I think even with Paul, you see this sanctification. And it's like, I think we all experience, the more I know about Christ, the more I know about myself, the less I think about myself and the more I think about Christ. And as we grow, we do that more and more. But I think it's important to remember with a guy like Kanye that you're talking about someone who is in a world where for so long, he got ahead by promoting himself, by being boastful, by really expressing his pride and how great he was with this or that, and then on top of that, like, what does that? I think Jesus's warnings are very apropos. Like, what does $5 billion of net worth do to someone, and how they think about themselves and what they're able to do? Like, to be able to keep that in check, and at the same time be able to say, like, okay, so maybe I'm not the most brilliant genius in all the world, but at the same time, I can't sit back and not say, like, I got to this place because I'm an idiot. I mean, so there's a lot there to balance out too that I think is important to recognize. Like, in many ways, the life and the world that a guy like Kanye West is living in is very different from the average person, and to be able to reel that into the place where he's talking like all of us do, because we know our place in the world and how we've come to that place is just a different scale altogether. And I think that's important to recognize, even though he's still, as a Christian, called to walk in humility, and to die to himself. And I think we see that in ways, but it's just on a scale that's so different from anything we could even conceptualize.
Mm-hmm. Well, as we continue this conversation, I was just thinking, man, if I had a genius in my home, maybe one of my kids was a genius, I'd probably send him to Kepler Education, take a few classes, because you got to get somewhere that's well-rounded, somewhere that doesn't just value things like math and history, but the arts too, right? And knows how to round that out. So I would say go ahead and do that, man. If you got a kid in your house, you suspect that they're a genius, and you're like, man, how do I challenge my little genius kid? Go ahead and send them to Kepler Education. Tell them Wrath and Grace Radio sent you. All right. So one of the things I was thinking as you guys were talking about Kanye here is there seems to be a lot that you guys seem to appreciate about how he talks. And even thinking about him as a Christian, him taking the time to stop and pray, right? So he seems to value reading his Bible. He seems to value prayer, right? And he seems to value preaching. He seems to value hearing God's word, right? So when you think about this, things you don't expect to hear from presidential candidates. I don't know how seriously you're taking that as Kanye is a presidential candidate, but he's taking it seriously.
He's on ballots.
So he's
Nick
on
already wrote him in.
I've seen some write-ins, man. I recognize your handwriting, Nick. Well,
the first 4 times I voted, I wrote him in. I'm still deciding what to do on election day.
All right, good. So he's gonna vote for the wrong Kanye because he doesn't know his middle name. His middle name's Omari. He voted for Kanye Cameron West. He got the wrong dude. Dipset. But one of the things he brought up in the interview was how he values expository preaching and how he talks about Pastor Adam Tyson. So what do you guys, how does that sit with you guys when you're sitting here and you're listening to Kanye and he's talking about prayer and he's talking about reading his Bible at home with his wife, and now he's talking about the value of expository preaching. How did that catch you guys?
Well, first of all, I thought, look, watch now. Expository preaching will become popular once again in Christian hip hop. Because, who can deny that was raw that he brought that up? And he may not have put it in the most delicate terms or whatever. The dude, he was exhibiting that he understands what expository preaching is, why it's important, the value of it. And that was on the Joe Rogan show, man. I think that is so dope.
Yeah.
But now it's going to be cool again to talk about that.
The way he said it too, he said one of my pastors, Pastor Adam, it's the way he preaches is called expository. It's like 1-to-1 by the word. I like all different kinds of preachers, but there's some types of preachers. They get up, they have the Bible in their hand, and they close the Bible, and then they just talk for 2 hours. And then he says, but the expository preachers go line for line. And for me, it's like I come from entertainment. I got so much sauce. I don't need no sauce on the word. I need the word to be solid food that I can understand exactly what God was saying to me. I love that. And then he went on to talk about Adam going to his spot in Calabasas and doing Bible studies and stuff like we heard about from Adam Tyson himself. But I think that was fantastic. And like you said, I don't know that Joe Rogan has probably ever even heard the term expository preaching.
Never.
But, one of the things that was part of this to me is if anyone listens to Joe Rogan from time to time, and anytime he talks about Christianity, it's always very negatively. It's always filled with stereotypes, negative stereotypes, and it's always sort of mockingly. But there's no denying that what Kanye, when Kanye was talking the way he was talking, first of all, he did so unashamedly. He didn't pull back in any way because I'm talking to Joe Rogan, to this audience. But also, in addition to that, that I think Joe was seriously captivated by some of those ideas, and he was asking him questions about Christianity, about his faith and what that means and why it means those things to him. And he was almost like it was a very different way of him talking about faith and Christianity specifically than anything I'd ever heard him talk about before. And so there was obviously some level of influence there. And look, I mean, he said so many things that you hear sort of his charismatic influence from his past come out, and the way he's talking about manifesting things and all of that, about anointings and all this stuff. But at the end of the day, I think there's progress, and I think we see him getting there. And if he continues, he still calls Adam one of his pastors. So I don't know at this point what their connection is still. But if he stays with some solid dudes in time, then Lord willing, he'll continue to come along, and we'll see some more progress.
Yeah, it's good. Now, what do you guys think about? You used the term, the phrase just there shortly, Nick, level of influence. And so one of the things that seems to be pretty consistent on the Joe Rogan show is the level of influence that they are under while they are talking about any topic. And so I didn't see any smoke. I didn't see nothing going on, right? Obviously got Kanye coming in. He's not going to have it, right? And so how did Joe Rogan survive for 2 hours? Just... did he had to take care of business right before Kanye walked in?
He's in sober October.
Yeah. So listen, what was up with that?
I know how he got through. It's easy. If you listened on the Apple app, the podcast app, you know that he started with about 10 minutes of ads, and he said the phrase CBD about 1,000 times. So he was on the Christian weed this time.
No, he's every year in October, Joe Rogan does sober October. He doesn't take any drugs or drink any alcohol.
So I didn't know that.
So that's probably why he brought Kanye in October.
Yeah, exactly. But you could tell he records those ads after the episode because you hear him reference it, and in that ad he really felt that he was like, these are essential to my survival.
He was like, I never would have made it. For 2 hours with Kanye. Oh, snap. But nah, man, I was thinking about that, man. Normally, man, on that show, man, they're kicking it, bro. And they didn't seem to, there was no keeksing going on in there with the Kanye interview. So that stood out. So one thing I'm curious about is, let's talk about Kanye, the presidential candidate. Again, he's taking himself seriously. I don't know how seriously a lot of people are taking him. So one question would be, should we take him seriously? Should we really consider, right, as people are considering voting one way or another, and some people are saying, I'm going to write in my vote. So if somebody's thinking, I'm going to write in a vote, should they seriously consider Kanye West? And then my other question would be, if the name wasn't Kanye West, let's just say this was Joe Schmo who was running for president. What do you think, man? This person, this nameless person who has the ideas of Kanye West, should we take that person seriously? And what are those ideas?
Yeah, well, I mean, I do. Nameless or not, I think we should take the guy seriously on some level. Look, we're in a time in history, and I'm not saying one way or another about any candidate for any office right now. I'm just laying out some facts here. We currently have a president who is famous for being rich and for being a reality television show host. We have another candidate who is famous for being a politician for 47 years of his life. Other states have had a governor who was a professional WWF wrestler. Arnold Schwarzenegger was a governor, and he was an actor and a bodybuilder. Ronald Reagan was an actor from Hollywood. So you could go down the SNL comedian. What was his name? Was a senator.
Up in Minnesota. You're doing.
Yeah, for a time because and then got.
But he got Me Too though.
Yeah, well,
Al Franken.
That's the kind of people that Luke's friends and neighbors vote for.
Yeah, he got Al Franken and Ilhan, whatever her name is.
Omar. Yeah, they got some quality candidates up there. So
Luke, you're muted.
Luke's talking, but he's muted graciously.
I said I'm truly missional. I'm
Yeah.
on the field up here.
Yeah. So like that part aside, where people would think, oh well, he's a hip hop artist, and that's the only way they think about him. Let's bury that whole thing, because my goodness, look across the spectrum at what we've already had in office and tell me that it's, in so many ways we've sort of moved into this celebrity culture where it's like, now people are like, oh, maybe Oprah will run for president or whatever. So let's forget that kind of nonsensical response to the whole thing, and then just think about his ideas and the things he's talking about and advocating for. So I already mentioned his ideas about, like, I want to be, as a Christian for one, and out of my own experience too, like, I want someone who is very hesitant to bring the nation into war. Something else he talked about that I thought, like, especially kind of like conservatives and liberty-minded people used to talk about all the time, was the national debt and how dangerous that is to us and how do we recover that. And he brought up, like, hey, I was $500 million in debt, and now I'm worth $5 billion in just a few years after that. I think I have some ideas as to how something like that. They don't even talk about debt anymore, as if it's like not an issue, and that's probably the greatest harm to our nation. And then, of course, all of his comments with regard to something like abortion, like so broken by that issue that he didn't even want to say the word abortion, because it's so offensive to him, and something that he didn't want others to hear. And it almost got the impression like maybe someone's kids are listening to this, and so I don't want them to hear that and have to know what that is.
And then Joe was dropping F-bombs, so the kids didn't care after that.
Right.
I
exactly.
thought Joe would hold it back in respect, but it was fine. It was a natural conversation. Yo, here's what I think. There were so many things that touch on that, and to me, if he's not a viable candidate right now, I think he will be one day if he continues on this path. If he's obviously, these are his newer thoughts, and if he goes down this road and does the sort of things he's talking about, I think that in the next election cycle or those to come, Kanye West could be an extremely viable candidate for the chief. I think there's areas that he needs to develop. I think that Joe kind of caught him a little bit off guard with his foreign policy question, and I think, Kanye, I was looking for him to articulate a non-aggression principle, which I'm sure he probably would or will. But again, he gave the wise answer, which is to surround himself with counsel. On abortion, he just doesn't really mess around with it. He says it for what it is, and it is absolutely insane. People want to talk about insane. We kill babies. I mean, it'll never really ring in our hearts like it really is.
You notice one of the things he did that so often doesn't happen was that he tied the issue of abortion to the issue of race, and said, you want to know what real racism is? It's that we're killing all of our black children, and that's a problem that nobody wants to talk about, at least in the mainstream, in terms of politicians.
Absolutely. Love that he went there, and as someone who clearly has demonstrated that he has a big burden for the African American community. So super dope. There was another issue in there where he kind of at some times kind of seemed to slight capitalism, which he used the term. And I think they were talking about the healthcare system, which Joe Rogan was really vying for some sort of basic universal healthcare there. And what Kanye said at that point was something like, capitalists want to keep people sick so that they can provide the drugs and all the rest. And the real problem with our healthcare system today is it's extremely bloated because of all the regulations. If there was a real free market, a true capitalism and competition in the health industry, then we would see costs just dropping immensely and that sort of thing. But that doesn't bother me. To some people, it'll bother them that he used the word capitalism in a negative context. But I knew exactly what he was saying, and I agree 100%. So don't agree with Joe Rogan on it. Anyways, those are issues where, to me, on all of the issues he brought up that I can think of, he's on the right path, I would say. So I can dig it big time, and I'll be praying for him for sure.
I think another thing that's interesting in terms of, I hadn't thought about that. Like, if he's not now, he's kind of on the path. And a lot of times when you think about the presidency, you don't just think about who the president's going to be. You think about the first lady as well. And so it's interesting that, you know, because when we're talking about President Kanye West, we're talking about First Lady Kim Kardashian West. All right. See, Nick started coughing.
Now we're on to a whole different issue, son.
Wait a second. Hold on a second. Right. So we're talking about that too. But I don't know if a lot of people know, you know, Kim has gone back to school to become a lawyer, you know. And so when you think about President Kanye
she was highly influential with President Trump with regard to prison reform stuff. So it's not like she doesn't know what she's talking about. And again, someone else who everyone writes off, but has built some level of an empire herself.
Yeah. So it's just interesting, man, to kind of see them in this phase of life, man, like really going through this metamorphosis right in front of us. And the funny thing is, as kids, I remember always growing up, you know, you think, oh man, you'd see somebody super talented. And I remember always hearing stuff like, man, imagine if Eminem got saved, or imagine if so-and-so got saved. You know, that you think about this celebrity who is super talented, but really vile. And I remember as a kid always thinking, man, imagine if they got saved. And then, you know, you'd have like the super, you know, holy responses like, well, you know, God doesn't need these people to, you know, which he doesn't. But, you know, that's always kind of been the immediate
He don't
response.
need you either, fool.
Right. Yeah. Right. Like he doesn't need this. He doesn't need that. Right. The kingdom of Christ is going to advance.
Well,
it in
part of
that
that response, though, is because he already has Kirk Cameron.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Now
Man.
this
he does have Kirk Cameron.
The creative genius of our time.
Yeah. It's just like, why even bother with anybody else? You know what I'm saying? We got Left Behind series, all type of stuff, bro. So it's you know, but yeah, man. So it's interesting to kind of watch this unfolding before our eyes. So, man, before we wrap up, one last quick question. But this last portion of our show is brought to you by Magothy Payments. If you own a small business, or maybe Kanye, if you're watching this and you need a payment processing company somewhere to process your $5 billion net worth, let me tell you about Magothy Payments. Hey, Jay Aaron, if you land this one, boy,
man, you better be up and man.
We want commission, man. We want man, we'll take 1% commission.
We'll take 0.5%, son.
0.5% in perpetuity on that account. All right.
In perpetuity.
So, but Kanye, if you listen to this, you want to work with a Christian payment processing company, you need to call Magothy Payments. Go to Magothy, tell them Wrath and Grace Radio sent you. Ask for JAron/Geronimo/ whatever you need to do to make sure it ties back to Wrath and Grace Radio. All right, Kanye. So do that. You know you want to work with a Christian.
The cat's writing laws out in Maryland. He's the cat.
Writing laws. That's right up your alley, bro. He's writing laws that you know what I'm saying. So Kanye, man, go ahead and do that. Tell them we sent you. Oh man, we just came up, y'all. We just came up. We don't even know it yet.
And just so you guys know, 0.5% of $5 billion is still $25 million. So we'll be.
That's it. That's it. All right. Yeah. We'll settle.
Kept it modest.
Let's
give me neither
say,
riches nor poverty.
Let's just say our production quality might increase dramatically.
No, it's going away because if you split 23 million between the three, you'll never see any of us again. Our churches will not see us again. We will be gone, bro.
We will be broadcasting live from the British Virgin Islands. our new yacht out in the middle of the Indian Ocean.
Yo, Felicia, all her patients, you need to find a new doctor. Ain't no more Christmas cards coming to Target from Angel. Ain't no more albums coming from my wife. Yo, we are gone, bro.
But we'll still serve a church somewhere. Don't forget.
I'll tithe.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, send that online. So yeah, Kanye, hit up Magothy, man. Tell him we sent you. All right, please. Where the camera? Kanye, we need this, please. Yo.
For just $1 million a day, you can sponsor the hosts of Wrath and Grace Radio.
A small loan of $1 million.
That's it, yo. That's it. Nothing. You won't even miss it. All right, Joe. So, what? Last question. We'll wrap this thing up, man. The connection between the arts and business, the arts and economics, right? Kanye has made $5 billion by being an artist, by being creative, right? And this is something that is not emphasized in our education system, at least not anymore. The arts, the idea of, what value is there in somebody learning to paint something on a canvas, or someone being able to read sheet music, or what have you. These aren't skills that are like, man, you got to be rounded out well in these areas. So what connection? Is this just a fluke for Kanye, or is there something to be gleaned here in terms of being well-rounded in the arts and being able to be successful in business?
One of the things that sets Kanye apart in this is he is extremely entrepreneurial, which is a key. Anytime you've had artists in the past, let's say Equiano, the reason that his autobiography did what it did is because he was behind the marketing, he was behind all that, right? And he retained the rights to his stuff. And Kanye, this is what he's been talking about a lot recently, is about recording artists and how the companies use them. So anytime you have a creator who's also business savvy, it's really the recipe for success, and in that realm. And I love when he talks, because those are freeing principles. These are free market principles that benefit everybody involved. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah, I think there's two things here. One, if people would go to patreon.com/wrathandgrace and join for only $10 a month, they could go back in the archives and see a video that I did for Patreon supporters only, where I talked about the value of the liberal arts in a well-rounded life and education. And part of that, what I talked about was how so much of our modern educational thoughts and education revolve around how much money can I make, and how is that all derived mainly from being a part of STEM, so the science, technology, engineering, and math. That everything is sort of geared towards that and sort of the modern model of education anymore, and the liberal arts have been left out of a lot of education now, because everything has sort of this monetary value tied to it in people's minds. And so you hear people even mock the idea of studying the humanities, of getting a degree in literature or in philosophy or something, as if those things don't matter. And so I think the first thing we need to recognize is that the things that we have and enjoy and appreciate in this life, we wouldn't have and enjoy and appreciate to the extent that we do if it were not for people who were thinking artistically, philosophically, literarily, that we're having this mindset where we think in categories very much apart from just this idea that I'm doing what I'm doing so that I can make as much money as possible. However, what that doesn't mean is that these things cannot lend themselves to that, because I think in the grand scheme of things, we recognize that there is value to this, and people will put their resources into these artistic endeavors or whatever kinds of humanities related endeavors, because they see the value in them in improving their lives, in improving their place in enjoying the world and the things that God has given us. If people look back at our episode on truth, beauty, and goodness, we talked about some of these things and how important it is that we recognize that. So, people want to mock the idea of art and of music being viable options for people to pursue in life. But at the same time, they're going to do that while they're shouting over the top of the radio playing, while they're looking at a painting on their wall, while they're getting ready to go into the movie theater to watch a movie. I mean, it's laughable that people would sort of mock the idea. And so I think one last thing that I've thought of in this is that Christians and this is a pet peeve, I know the three of us have talked about this before, that Christians have this mindset that if Christian artists are doing something for the church, that they're supposed to just do it for free out of the goodness of their heart because they're doing it for the church. And so I shouldn't have to pay you to make beats for me or do some graphic art for me or whatever because you're just serving the kingdom. Well, if I want to do that as a Christian artist, then I have the prerogative to do that in the same way that I can give you money or give you whatever. But to assume that someone should take their gift that they could otherwise utilize in order to make a living for themselves and say, well, because it's for the church, you have to do it for free is a ridiculous notion. And it's offensive because I wouldn't ask a car mechanic who's a Christian to just, hey, you're a Christian, I'm a Christian, so fix my car for free. Or a home builder, well, you're a Christian, I'm a Christian, so come build me a new house for free.
Some would say that.
Well, they might, but everyone else would tell them how crazy they are, right?
You're right.
I mean, it's
absolutely.
It is a shameful way of trying to cheat people out of what is rightfully theirs.
It is, and it comes from, and we've talked about this too, just an absolute underappreciation of the value and importance of art. So if it doesn't really matter that much anyway, then the artist should certainly do that sort of stuff for free.
Yeah.
And it makes me sad.
It makes you sad. Genuine sadness being experienced by Luke Walker at this very moment. Look at it. Look at it. But now, man, if you think about some of the stuff Kanye has been, kind of pushing against with the music industry, a lot of people don't know this, man. So your favorite Christian artist, you wonder, like, man, how come they don't put out more albums? Man, I need a new album from so-and-so. Man, do you know that when you stream your favorite artist's song, that artist is compensated at 1/3 of 1 cent per stream? Did you know that? That's how much we value art societally. 1/3 of 1 cent per stream. That's how much is generated. So that's before the label gets their cut. And that's before you pay taxes on it. They ain't making no money off these albums. So I think one thing that we're all saying
Kanye said that. Remember, he said that? I lose money making music. If a guy like that is losing money making music, imagine your favorite Christian artist.
Kanye said it's like a $4 million negative.
Yeah. It's like if we want our artists to disappear, it's almost like an experiment in communism. Everyone wants the art for free. So you see what that does to the artists is pretty soon, who's going to be making anything?
Yeah.
And that's especially true of Christians. We do need to support Christian artisans and all that. That's a whole different discussion.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at, man. Like, buy people's stuff, man. If you can stream an album or you can buy it for $9.99, like if you really value art and you want to make more of it, buy that joint for the $9.99.
Think about it. All the hours, everything that went into it, and you get it for $9.99. The whole thing.
Yeah.
That's raw.
Hey, like, think of the art, all the work and the beauty that's gone into this piece of art that people could own for themselves if they just went to patreon.com/wrath and grace for $10 a month.
That's it. And you got this beautiful hand drawn.
It's lovely.
Just, you know what I'm saying?
Every one of them custom hand drawn.
Every one individually. No machines. Matter of fact, the mugs were spun on a pottery wheel. We've lied so much in this.
Dan, you're gonna have to put up. We're gonna have our editor put up another one of those notices. This cannot be verified.
We need all the disclaimers, y'all.
We need our lawyers present.
Yeah.
Hey, maybe
correct.
Kim Kardashian, if you're out there, can you?
We need
be
help.
Our legal representation.
We need help.
Yo, let me tell you something. One thing I'm not looking forward to as we wrap this up. 2 times I've taken off my glasses and looked directly into the camera. And if my lazy eye gets memed, I don't know if I'll recover, yo. We might have to
all you memesters out there, you know what to do.
Oh, man. All right, y'all. Well, hey, this was a fun conversation, man. Today, we got together. We talked about presidential candidate 2020. It's the most 2020 thing ever. 2020 presidential candidate Kanye West. All right. We want to hear in the comments. Are y'all taking Kanye seriously? Is it possible he may earn a write-in vote from you? We want to know. Put that on the comments. Now, if you want to have the real good spirited conversation, there's only one way to do that. And that is in our top secret chat room that we didn't tell you about, that you get access to once you sign up for Patreon. So go ahead and do that as well. Patreon.com/wrath and grace. Until next time, we'll holla at y'all later.